I'm going to offer you a quest. You don't have to take this quest if you don't want to. It's up to you whether you take this quest. And at the end of the presentation today, if you feel worthy, I will bestow a quest upon you. And so I'm letting you know in advance that there's a quest coming. There's also going to be a couple of writing exercises. So what I'd like everybody to do is to get a pen and a piece of paper. Just find one nearby, get yourself set up, because I'm going to ask you a couple of times to write something down. So get yourself prepared for that. Gird yourself for the quest that's coming ahead. Because we're going to be talking about a lot of quests today. Today, we're going to talk about how to make a map for the customer journey of the hero. Most of you know me. My name's Caelan Huntress. I'm the creative director of Stellar Platforms. It's a digital marketing agency that helps entrepreneurs make more money in less time by setting up smart marketing systems. I've been running this agency for about 10 years, but before that, I was a performer. I used to be an acrobat in the circus. I've spent a lot of time on stage. I've probably done 24 Shakespeare plays, and the craft of storytelling, that's where I started my career, was in the art and the science of story. That's why I like today's presentation so much, is because it allows me to combine these two areas that I've spent so much time in. And when I looked at these two journeys, the customer journey and the journey of the hero, I found out that they matched. And because I've spent so much time studying each of these journeys, I was able to overlap them. I found a new way to make marketing an adventure. And so I'm really excited that you're here to join me for this adventure today. I'm going to go through a quick agenda so we know what we're talking about. First, I'm going to talk about why a customer journey map is important. Then we're going to discuss the neuroscience of storytelling and how our brains are hardwired for story. I'll share with you the specific stages of Joseph Campbell's journey of the hero. And then I'll show you how those align to the stages of the customer journey. And finally, we'll talk about practical tools you can use for making your own customer journey map. And one of these tools is the customer journey workbook. And for those of you who are watching this live, you received a link to this workbook in the email that I sent you this morning. And I'll also provide you a link in the chat box towards the end of the presentation. If you're watching this on the replay, there's a button somewhere nearby where you'll be able to get a copy of this Google Doc. And this Google Doc you make a copy of, and then you can edit. And this will help you create a customer journey map for your business. Now, this is the right place for you if you are an entrepreneur and you make a living selling your thing. If you're a marketer and you sell someone else's thing, or if you're an expert and you make a living by selling your ideas. You're also in the right place if you have an audience that listens to you, if you have offers to sell to that audience, and if you have a website and an email list, then you're going to be able to use the practical tools I'm going to give you at the end of this presentation. If what you want is a shorter journey from stranger to customer, if you want great clients ready to hire you right away, and you want a high quality reputation that precedes you, a customer journey map is going to help you attain these things. These are the things that happen when you're successfully marketing yourself. And I spend a lot of time thinking about this topic. Marketing yourself is the subject of a lot of my work and my writing. And this is also the title of my next book. You're the first to hear it, that I'm writing a book called Marketing Yourself, and it's going to be coming out early next year. And I chose this as my topic because the people that I work with, entrepreneurs, experts, and marketers, people who make a living by selling ideas and by communicating with an audience, I find the problems that they face the most interesting to solve. Everyone I know who has to market themselves, I find that they typically face these same 4 problems. The first problem is feeling foolish when you have to market yourself. We spend all this time cultivating our voice and our content, and then we go out into the marketplace and we have to let people know that there's ways that they can purchase things from us. And it changes the dynamic of how we communicate with people. The second problem is not knowing what to say when it's time to market yourself. Sometimes people can express interest in working with you, and then you stop and you pause because you're not quite sure how to articulate how someone can buy from you or what the value would be if they did. The third problem I see a lot is leads going cold. Someone expresses interest or they give you a clue that they might be a good client. And instead of following up on that right away, because you don't really know what to say and you don't want to make them uncomfortable and you don't want to make you uncomfortable, you just let that lead sit in your inbox and you procrastinate day after day, hoping that it'll all work out. But the fourth problem I see a lot is imposter syndrome. Feeling that we don't really have the right to talk about our topics of expertise because we know deep down all of our flaws. And even if someone else says, wow, you're really great and I love what you do, inside, we don't necessarily feel that way. Because even though everybody else can't see all the ways that we mess up in our day-to-day life, we see every single one. And so these are the 4 problems that I see most often. And I'd like to know if you face any of these problems yourselves. So type a number in the chat box and let me know which one you struggle with the most. If you struggle with feeling foolish, type number 1. If you struggle with knowing what to say, type number 2. If your leads are going cold, type number 3. And if you face imposter syndrome, type number 4. Seeing lots of 4s, lots of 3s. Stephanie's got a collection. Yeah, it's common for us to have a selection of these different problems that we go through. But the good news is all of these problems are made easier with a map. When you have a map of your customer journey, you know all of the different stages. You've anticipated what happens when someone transitions from one stage to another. You've curated that journey so that you've learned exactly what to say and when to say it. That's the advantage of having a customer journey map. The other day on Twitter, Nick Sharma said that easy customer journeys mean higher conversion rates and happy customers. This is what you can get with a customer journey. They found that the ROI of your marketing dollar increases by 38% when you have an articulated customer journey. Nielsen did this study of a bunch of different Fortune 500 companies that did and didn't have listed customer journeys. And the ones that did, on average, had a 38% higher ROI for their marketing dollar. What most marketing gets wrong is thinking that they are the hero. You are not the hero in your customer journey. Your customer is the hero. Your customer is Luke Skywalker. Your role is Obi-Wan. You are the wise mentor that gives them the tools, that points the way so that they can accomplish their goals. The customer journey that we're going to be talking about today is the quest of your customer. Your role is not to be the hero in this journey. And so what I want you to do is to start thinking of yourself as the wise mentor. the guide by the side, the one who helps the hero complete the story. But this story is not for you. This story is for your customer. There's a lot of different ways to map out a customer journey. And this is the standard customer journey image that you find on Wikipedia. And it's got a lot of different phases, and it has a bunch of different touch points. And every customer journey is custom. My customer journey is different than your customer journey, is different than their customer journey, because we all run different businesses. So for every business and every offer, you need to create a different customer journey if you're going to drill down to those specific steps. From a wider angle, in broad strokes, we all go through similar stages. But what we're going to do with the map making tools I'm going to share with you later is we're going to drill down to these tiny steps. And for those, I can't really give you a template for those because they're specific to your business and to your customer. But these broad generalizations are useful because they help us frame the entire customer journey as a story. Our minds use story to communicate highly complicated pieces of information. For thousands of generations, we've sat around a campfire to share stories. I live in New Zealand. And the Maori people are descended from Polynesians who navigated the entire Pacific Ocean thousands of years ago. And the way that they did it was by sharing stories. The ancestral stories of the Maori let their descendants know which seasons they could find certain winds, where to turn at specific stages of their journey. It was through stories that they communicated this through the generations. One of the oldest stories we have is the Iliad by Homer. And the Iliad was the first written story in Western culture. And when it was written down, Homer had been dead for centuries. We actually don't even know when Homer lived or how old the Iliad is. Homer was an epic poet, and he created this long poem in metered rhyme that he taught to generations of bards after him. And those bards carried on the story to communicate highly specific pieces of information. Many of the main characters in the Iliad are the ancestors of the 12 tribes of ancient Greece. Your tribe in ancient Greece all had a common ancestor. One tribe traced their lineage back to Menelaus, and another tribe traced their lineage to Diomedes. And they communicated the qualities and characteristics of these tribes through the heroic stories that they shared. This image in front of you is Hector killing Patroclus. And Patroclus was the companion and lover of Achilles. Achilles was the greatest warrior on the Greek side, and he decided not to fight against Troy, and he was sulking in his tent. And then Patroclus took Achilles' armor and went to the field of battle, and Hector thought he was facing his great enemy, and he killed Patroclus, thinking it was Achilles. This was what sparked the rage of Achilles. The first line of the Iliad, "Sing, O Muse, of the rage of Achilles." It started from this moment. This was what started the entire epic story. These stories work because our brains interpret story. And so now I'm going to share with you how neuroscience follows the 5-act structure. The 5-act structure was defined by Gustav Freytag in 1863. And he said that every story goes through exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and denouement. The denouement is where we understand the meaning of the story. The falling action is when we see the consequences from the conflict that happens in the climax. During the rising action, we have greater and greater levels of stress. And we have to start the story with empathy. Because if you don't have empathy for the characters in the story and for the situations that they're facing, then the story doesn't matter. We don't remember the story. We don't care. And so the exposition's purpose is to create empathy between the teller and the audience. Each of these 5 stages corresponds to a hormone released in our brains. Oxytocin is also known as the love hormone. This is the hormone that our brain emits when we feel connection to another. Cortisol is the stress hormone. That's where we feel fight or flight. The blood leaves our organs and it comes out to our limbs so that if we need to, we can escape or attack. During the rising action, we feel greater and greater levels of stress so that we're invested in the story. Until finally the endorphins are released during the conflict. Dopamine is the reward chemical. This is what we feel when a cause creates an effect. And if the climax of the story doesn't lead to any consequences, we're missing something. The serotonin that we feel at the end, that's emitted at the end of the story, that brings us a sense of balance, where we see the story as a whole, where its meaning matters. And each one of these emotional states that we go through, we need each one to make a story. Imagine taking one of these away. Imagine participating in a story. You're watching it, you're listening to it, you're telling it, and you skip one of these stages. Do you see how it's not quite complete? We need every one of these stages, each one of these hormones in this order, because this is how our brains evolved to communicate story. For thousands of generations, we told stories this way. We adapted them into a specific order of events. When you try and change around the order or leave things out, the stories don't last. The greatest students of the stories that last is Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell was a professor of the classics at Sarah Lawrence College in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. And he studied the classical and antique texts of multiple cultures. And what he found behind all of those mythologies was what he calls the monomyth. That single myth that underlies every other myth. His book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, talks about this theory of the monomyth. And it describes how every hero in every journey is one hero going through the same journey of the hero. And these are the 12 stages. The hero starts in the ordinary world, where he receives a call to adventure. In many stories, he refuses that call before meeting a mentor who introduces him to a new world. He crosses the threshold into this world where he faces tests, enemies, and allies. Near the climax of the story, he approaches the Inmost cave, where he faces the supreme ordeal. If he survives that supreme ordeal, he receives a reward, which he then takes back to the world of the common day, where he is resurrected and shares his elixir with his community. Now, for those of you who are students of Joseph Campbell, you may have noted that these stages are slightly different than how he laid them out. And that's because I'm using the 12 stages defined by Christopher Vogler in his book, The Writer's Journey. Christopher Vogler was a Hollywood screenwriter, and he took the journey of the hero and he adapted it to blockbuster movies. He found that same monomyth underneath every major blockbuster movie, and he saw that they went through the same 12 stages. So I'm going to use 12 blockbuster movies to illustrate these 12 stages. And the first is Frodo in the Shire, where he begins at the Lord of the Rings. He's in New Zealand, like I am, and I'm surprised there's no sheep. Oh, look, there is sheep. Yeah, there's sheep in the background there. This was filmed in New Zealand, and we need to see Frodo in the Shire, because if we started in the middle, where Frodo was already on the quest, we wouldn't know what he left behind. The story wouldn't matter nearly as much if we didn't know about the ordinary world. Frodo had a life of ease and abundance, and that's what he gave up. So everything he does in the rest of his story, it matters more because we get to see him in his ordinary world. When Katniss Everdeen saw her sister chosen by lottery to be taken into the Hunger Games, she took the call to adventure. She volunteered to take her place. She didn't have to. She could have stayed. But then we wouldn't have a journey of the hero. This is the step that separates the hero from everyone else in the ordinary world. It's the hero who takes the call to adventure. In many stories, the hero refuses the call. And when Thomas Anderson in The Matrix receives a call from Morpheus, Morpheus tells him to go outside the building and to climb his way to safety. Neo tries, but then he refuses the call. And he says, I can't do this. And he goes back inside. Refusing the call is a critical step along the journey of the hero, because that refusal, it tests the hero to see how much does it matter that he takes this journey. The next stage is meeting the mentor. And in The Sword of the Stone, Arthur is living a much smaller life until he meets Merlin. Merlin introduces him to a world of magic and talking animals. And suddenly Arthur's world is expanded. He understands the breadth of the world before him. He couldn't take this journey without his mentor as a guide. Every journey of the hero has a mentor guiding the hero along. And this is your role. In the customer journey, you are the mentor. And we're going to talk about how your customer meets you in a little bit. When Dorothy crosses the threshold, she's swept up in a tornado and leaves Kansas to land in the world of Oz. We visually see the difference. Kansas is black and white, while the magical world of Oz is full of color and singing munchkins. That transition from the ordinary world to the new world where the adventure takes place, that crossing of the threshold happens in every journey of the hero. Because you can't have a journey in the ordinary world. The hero has to go into a new world. And that transition from the previous world to the new one, it's its own stage in the journey. When Harry Potter mounts his broom to play Quidditch, he has enemies on the court and off the court. The tests he faces, the alliances he forges, this is a large part of the rising action. But it doesn't culminate until you have some time for the approach to the Inmost cave. You can't go straight from the tests, enemies, and allies directly into the supreme ordeal. There has to be a stage where you examine the stakes. In every Mission Impossible movie, Ethan Hunt gathers his team of crack super thieves and they make their impossible plan. This stage reminds the audience of the risk. It drives home the challenge. If the hero just went straight into the supreme ordeal, we would lose that opportunity to continue raising the stakes. The big boss battle in Avatar: The Last Airbender was when Aang fought the Fire Lord. He knew he had to do this for 3 seasons, and he was working up to it the entire time. This supreme ordeal interspersed its scenes with another supreme ordeal for another side plot. The children of the Fire Lord, Zuko and Azula, had their final battle during the same scenes. We'd see a scene of Aang fighting the Fire Lord and a scene of Zuko and Azula fighting. Those 2 events may not have happened chronologically at the same time. But as an audience, we were presented those scenes spliced together, because as the audience, we were in the stage of the supreme ordeal. And even if it modifies the chronology of what actually happened on the ground, when the audience is ready for a particular stage, that's the stage that you give them for all of the plots that you're communicating at once. After he chose the cup of a carpenter, Indiana Jones received the Holy Grail so that he could heal his father and bring him back from the brink of death. This reward was what he'd been searching for the entire movie. This is what Alfred Hitchcock called the MacGuffin. The MacGuffin, he said, has to be something that the hero cares about so much that they do everything in the movie. And what's interesting about the MacGuffin, according to Hitchcock, is it doesn't matter if the audience cares about the MacGuffin. It can be anything. The MacGuffin is the reward that the hero seeks through the entire journey. And whether or not you and I care doesn't matter. We just have to know that the hero cares, because the reward has to matter for the hero and not for us. Even after he plays guitar during the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, he gets his parents to kiss, and he saves his own existence, Marty McFly still has to go back to the future. He's got to get in his DeLorean and drive 88 miles per hour along the road back. The story's not done after the supreme ordeal. The story's not done after the hero receives the reward. There's still 3 critical steps so that we can return the hero to the world from whence they came. In the movie Inside Out, when Riley returns home from running away, and joy and sadness, 2 of the 5 emotions in her head, they make it back to headquarters. There's still 5 emotions, just like there was before, but the emotions are different. Sadness can now make core memories. These emotions have been resurrected and changed because of their journey. And the story owes it to us as an audience that we deserve to see this change. At the end of the epic 10-movie story arc that ends in Avengers Endgame, there's spoilers here, but if you haven't seen this, seriously, what are you waiting for? Go watch the Avengers. Captain America goes back in time and he returns all the Infinity Stones, and he comes back with something that was lost. His shield had been destroyed by Thanos. He brought back the shield that had been lost, that had been destroyed. And he didn't just bring it back as a museum relic. He didn't bring it back as a memento. He brought it back to share with his community. And this is the final stage of the hero's journey. When the hero returns, they bring an elixir that changes the ordinary world. These are the 12 steps of the journey of the hero. And if you craft a story with all 12 of these steps, then you can make a mythical story. This journey is typically divided into 3 acts. Act 1 is the departure from the ordinary world. Act 2 is the initiation into the new world. And Act 3 is the return to the world of the common day. These correspond to the 3 phases of the customer journey. They start in marketing, where they're learning to know you. They move into sales, where they're considering doing business with you. And they end in service, where they are a customer. Each of these phases has a specific action that the hero takes to move from one phase to the next. In the journey of the hero, it's when they leave home, when they cross the threshold. That's how they transition from one world to the next. When they have their final battle, their great climax, their supreme ordeal, that's when they can begin the return. But they can't return until that happens. With the customer journey, your future customer makes a request. They have some sort of signal that they give to you that lets you know they're ready to move out of marketing and into a selling conversation. For them to become a customer, they have to pay you. They have to make a purchase. You can't provide service to someone before they've paid you. You're selling to them until they become a customer. That transition, that action that they take of making a purchase, that's how you know which phase they're in. So let's take a closer look at each one of these phases. Your customer starts in the ordinary world, where they're facing pain points, just like everyone else in your target market. Those pain points are the common thread between everyone that you could potentially do business with. But there's an action that your customer takes. There's a call to adventure that separates the rest of your target market from the qualified lead. This might be subscribing to your newsletter. It might be filling out a form. It might be downloading a white paper. But this action is what separates the rest of the ordinary world from the leads that you can market to. The refusal of the call corresponds to the objections someone would have with working with you. And just like in the journey of the hero, objections are a natural part of this story. They shouldn't be avoided. They should be anticipated. You should be prepared for the objections to help people move through this phase seamlessly. When the hero meets the mentor, that's when they are introduced to you. When they find someone who can aid them on their quest. Act 2 begins with crossing the threshold. And the sales phase of the customer journey, sometimes it starts with a discovery conversation where you have a phone call, or a white paper where they study what it would be like to do business with you. They vet you. They make sure that you are qualified to solve their problems. The tests, enemies, and allies corresponds to the comparisons with your competitors. Your customer is going to look at what you offer versus what everyone else offers versus what if I did nothing? This comparison prepares them to approach the Inmost cave, where they make their buying decision. And this phase, where they make their buying decision, this is where they need all of the information to be confident about their decision. And if they don't have enough information when they reach the Inmost cave, if they still have lingering doubts, if they're unsure, they're not going to proceed. What we want to do is make it easier for people to progress from one phase to the next. The supreme ordeal is your checkout process. This is where they take out their credit card and they pay you. How easily can they do that? During this final battle, do they run into usability issues that you don't know about? Are they trying to pay in a different currency? Does your shopping cart not accept their card? Testing this process and getting it smooth and seamless is essential. When the hero receives the reward, that's when your customer can access what they purchased from you. And then once they have it, they take that purchase back to their ordinary world, where they solved the problems they were facing in the first place. After they solve these problems, your customer has changed. They have a new normal. There's a difference between who they were before and who they are now after this adventure. And if we're lucky, they will change their community. They will tell others about what it's like doing business with you and bring more heroes onto this adventure. As Christopher Vogler says, an effective story grabs your gut. It tightens your throat. It makes your heart race and your lungs pump. It brings tears to your eyes or an explosion of laughter to your lips. Does your story do that? When your customer goes on a journey to do business with you, do they feel any of those things? Joseph Campbell tells us, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. So now I'd like everyone to take their pen. And I'd like you to take a minute and write about the cave you fear to enter and the treasure that you seek. What is the cave you fear to enter? And what is the treasure that you seek? Okay, 5 more seconds. Great. Entering this cave is difficult for all of us. And we all have a different cave because we all have different fears. But this is where the treasure is kept. So now I want to share with you 5 different types of journeys that you can go on. You can have a quest. And remember, I'm going to give you a quest before we're done here today. And a quest has a real meaning. There's a purpose to a quest. And then there's an adventure. Adventures don't necessarily have meaning, but they sure are exciting. If it doesn't have excitement, it could be a story. And stories have power. That's how we share information as a species, as we share stories. But if you're missing a piece from that 5-act structure, all you have are clues. The clues don't cohere into any one progression. Without clues, you're just lost in the fog. When you're in the fog, the best you can do is wander from place to place. With clues, you can discover where you can go next. With a story, you have someone guiding you from the beginning to the end. When you're on an adventure, you have a map. You know where you're going. You might not know how to get there, but you know your destination. The clearest type of journey is a quest, and it operates like a GPS. A GPS is very different than a map. If you're trying to find your way to a destination, a map will tell you where it is. And you might be able to figure out where you are in relation to it. But what a GPS does is it gives you step-by-step instructions on how to get there. Every time you're presented with a choice, the GPS will tell you as you approach that choice, which choice to make. The map only provides you with the destination. It's up to you to figure out how to get there. A story can guide you through experience because your guide has been there before. With clues, you might have a direction of where you're heading, but in the fog, you're wandering around lost. You can hope that you get to your destination. Maybe you'll be lucky enough to do it. If you have a few clues, you can get clarity on what direction that is. With a guide at your side, you can be supported along the way. With a map, you develop understanding of the distance between where you are and where you want to go. But it's the GPS that gives you the actions that you take along the way. That's what the quest does, is it gives you step-by-step instructions for every step along the way. And that's how I designed the customer journey workbook, is as a GPS. By using this workbook, you can create the step-by-step actions that your customers take so that you'll give them more than just a map. You can give them a GPS so that they know step by step how to get closer to their goal. I'm also going to share with you 3 map-making tools that you can use to create a customer journey. And the first one that I really like is called Smaply. It's a fun name to say, Smaply, because it's got the map right in the center of it. And at smaply.com, you could set up a free account to try it out. If you want to upgrade to their paid version, you got to pay in euros because they're based in Europe. They give you step-by-step instructions, and you can use images for each of the stages. And there's all sorts of different qualifiers for each stage. I really like using this tool. Uexpressia is really nice because it's very visual. I like all the colors, and I like how you can customize from stage to stage. But the third tool isn't really a customer journey map, even though they call it that. Mailchimp has a customer journey map tool. However, it only aligns to the Mailchimp actions. And so I bring this one up because many of you have Mailchimp in your tech stack already. And they've just recently launched this as beta. And if you skip the first step of the ordinary world, you can create an action for every step after that. Maybe that action is an email, maybe it's a survey, maybe it's a tag that's applied because of some actions they've taken. And so these 3 tools, these are 3 tools that you can use for creating a customer journey map. But knowing what to put in them, that's what the customer journey workbook is for. My templates are tech agnostic because I work with clients who have a lot of different tech stacks. And so the templates that I create can be applicable to any type of technical platform that you're using. What you do in those platforms, it takes strategy. It takes consideration. It takes answers to specific deep questions. And that's what this workbook is for. The first section of the workbook lists all 12 steps, and you're given 4 questions for each step. And you can write answers to these questions as bullet lists. You can write long paragraphs, whatever you like. These are interactive questions. By answering these questions, it's going to help you uncover what really matters for each stage of the journey. Section 2 is about the actions that your customer takes between one stage and the next. Every stage has a signaling action. When someone moves out of the call to adventure and they refuse the call, when they begin to articulate their objections, what happens there? Are they looking at a sales page? Are they looking at a competitor's page? What happens when they enter that stage? That action that the customer takes, if you can identify that action, then you can encourage your customer to take that action on your website. The third section of the customer journey workbook takes these actions and interprets them through different pages of your website. You can lay out 12 pages on your website and organize them so that your customer moves through these pages along their customer journey. And if you know what the next action is that you want them to take, then you know the purpose of each individual page. The FAQ page is great for answering objections. You can write out every objection that someone has to working with you, and then write a paragraph as an answer to those objections. Put them on the FAQ page. But the action that takes them out of that stage and into meeting the mentor, if you know that that action is reading the about page, then what do you put at the bottom of your FAQ? Read about me here. You know that that's the next step. So you know that's what you want to encourage your customer to do next. And now I'm going to give you a quest. So I want you to sit up straight. If you feel ready for this quest, this is your mission if you choose to accept it. I'm going to take my pen, because the pen, as we know, is mightier than the sword, and I am going to dub thee on your shoulders to take this quest. Update your website. Sometime within the next 7 days, I want you to update your website to make it easier for your customer to take one action from one stage to the next. Now, if you are willing to take this quest, I want you to write "I will" in the chat box and tell me that you are accepting this quest that I am bequeathing on you. Who will take this quest? Tony has accepted this quest. Cherie has accepted this quest. Devra and Stephanie, you are on a quest. I'm glad you've accepted this quest because you are on your customer journey. Jerry has accepted. Thank you, Jerry. And if you're watching this on the replay, hit the tweet button below. Hit the button to tweet this presentation and say, "I accept this quest." Because this quest is what's going to transform your customer journey. It starts with one step. You don't have to do all 12 of these. You start with one. So now let's review our agenda. Make sure we've covered everything today. We talked about why you need a customer journey map. We discussed the neuroscience of storytelling and how our hormones are released in accordance with the 5-act structure. We went over all 12 stages of Joseph Campbell's Journey of the Hero, Christopher Vogler's Journey of the Hero. We went through how all of these stages overlap with the customer journey, and I shared with you some tools for making your own customer journey map. Now you can use this workbook and go out and go forth and do good work and complete your quest. But if you need a guide to help you, I'm hosting a one-day live workshop in 2 weeks' time. It's 3 hours. We're doing Pomodoro sessions, and we're working through the customer journey workbook. You can go to stellarplatforms.com/journey, and I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat box here, along with the link to the customer journey workbook. If you didn't get that earlier, you can open that link now, open it in a new tab. And if you want to join me for a live interactive workshop, then I'll spend 3 hours with you, helping you create your customer journey. I'm glad I could provide you some of the theory behind the customer journey, and I hope you do good work with it. But theory doesn't matter without action. It's the actions that we take that determine our effectiveness. It's not how well we understand something, it's how well we implement something. And so if you'd like some help with implementation, I'm going to be hosting this live workshop in 2 weeks. If you're watching this on the replay, there's going to be something else there. It's either on demand or another session. I don't know because I can't see into the future. If I did, I'd have a much more epic story for you. But I think we went through enough epic stories today. We've covered a lot of major blockbuster movies, some heroic storylines, and this myth making is something that you can use to make your marketing an adventure. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes if anyone would like to chat. But if you need to skedaddle, then thank you so much for coming.